Since the mythological era, every 200 years, a battle between the goddess Athena and the underworld king Hades breaks out. And now, another holy war is about to begin. When the world is threatened by evil, warriors of hope will surely appear. They are called the Saints of Athena, and their cloths represent the 88 constellations. They always fight to the death. Their fists can tear apart the sky and split the earth. In 18th century Europe, a group of young men were bullying a dog. They threw stones at its head for fun. This blonde boy walked by, felt extremely outraged, and rushed out to embrace and protect the dog. He lived in an orphanage outside the village and was currently studying painting at the village church. The young men saw him as a weirdo. They snatched the dog from his hands, wanting to punish it for eating their lunch that they had worked so hard to afford. The blonde boy offered to trade the dog for a box of red paint he had just bought in town yesterday. Selling it could buy a lot of bread. Seeing this, the young men released the dog and prepared to feast. While they were enjoying themselves, another teenager came and kicked the paint jar out of their hands. His name was Tenma. Tenma scolded the blonde for giving away the paint so easily when he had to work so hard to earn it. When the young men tried to hit him with a stick, Tenma took on both of them alone. The blonde thought Tenma was too much. After all, those young men only did that for food and survival. Besides, the blonde didn't like using violence to solve problems, so he made Tenma apologize to the thugs as well. The young men left nursing their wounds, not forgetting to turn back and warn Tenma to remember their faces. It was hard to understand how someone rough like Tenma could be friends with someone gentle like the blonde. Back home, the blonde focused on painting his artwork. Someone walked in, remarking that he was even more skilled than the rumors suggested, as if the paintings could come alive at any moment. He was a priest from the cathedral in the forest. Attracted by the blonde's paintings, he specially came to meet him. He stepped closer, guessing that the blonde often visited the cathedral in the forest because he wanted to see the painting of Saint Michael that they kept inside. The blonde agreed. He was always the one sent there. He heard it was a beautiful painting that would make any sinner unconsciously feel remorseful and shed sincere tears when looking at it. His greatest dream was to see that painting with his own eyes. Hearing this, the man suddenly became dangerous. Very quickly, he regained his normal composure. He asked why the boy hadn't colored the eyes of the saint yet. The boy replied that he hadn't found the right color. He wanted a red like the sunset. Although he had tried many shades of red, he still couldn't achieve it. The man smiled. The human ability to create colors has its limits. The colors humans see are merely illusions created by the reflection of light. In other words, colors are just fabrications. The boy didn't understand what the man meant. He suggested the boy go to the mountain north of the city if he wanted to find true color. There were fruits dyed in the blood of angels whose wings had been broken, and they carried the truest red in this world, and so alone went to search for that true color. This mountain was very deep. He didn't know if he could find true color here. While chasing the dog, he arrived at a place as beautiful as Greek mythology. This was a place only those permitted by God could enter. Paradise. The flowers here might be the red the priest mentioned, but they were still very different from the red alone was looking for. Finding this place beautiful, he set up his easel to paint the scenery. No matter what anyone said, he still loved the colors created by the reflection of light. A single red would have many unique shades of red. Light has its own emotions, just like the human soul. He loved this colorful world. Suddenly, all the animals fled. Someone approached, saying he could obtain any color he desired. If all the colors of light were gathered together, the result would be the color of darkness. This person introduced herself as Pandora. She stepped forward and placed a kiss on his lips. She said she had always been searching for him, her king. He was the one with the purest soul in this era. Now he would become the king of the underworld, Hades. Battles seemed to have broken out everywhere. This man was the invincible warrior Doko. This time he came here to defeat the underworld king Hades. Looking at the situation, Doko guessed that Hades had been resurrected. But no matter how he pressed them, the warriors wouldn't tell him. He was a saint of Athena. Based on the situation, he guessed Hades had been reincarnated in human form. Alone had fainted on the mountain and was found by his two friends. Tenma sensed that Alone was in pain and ran to search for him. Tenma could sense everything very clearly, as if there was an entire universe inside his body. If he concentrated on something, he would feel as though a tremendous energy was flowing out of his body. Alone felt a bit of a headache. Suddenly, the silver pendant around his neck fell to the ground. When Tenma tried to pick it up, Alone frantically rushed to protect it. He asked Tenma if he sensed something within himself. Suddenly, two children came running with news. The people in the city, wanting to save themselves, had diverted the flood toward their area. Alone believed that everyone was a good person, so he would go persuade the adults. Tenma would go check the condition of the river. Because of the promise between Tenma, Alone, and another girl, Tenma would definitely protect everyone at all costs. Then he ran off to find a way to stop the water from flowing into the river. Not knowing what to do, he used his fists to redirect the flow. Doko sensed an unusual energy and followed it. Seeing that the person stopping the flow was just a child, Doko wanted to stop him. The inner power within Tenma burst forth as he reminisced, and he successfully shattered the huge rock. Doko had no more doubts. This was the Cosmo he was looking for. He jumped down and saved Tenma. The river returned to normal and everyone was safe. Afterward, Doko asked Tenma if he wanted to use that power to save people by becoming a saint of Athena. Today, Alone had Tenma pose as a model for painting, fearing that they might not see each other again in the future. After struggling for a while, Alone gave up. He had always wanted to mix a red like Tenma's eyes. The brown in Tenma's eyes was more brilliant than the sunset and more vivid than the red of any flame. But currently, Alone still couldn't mix that color. So he promised that when Tenma returned as a saint of Athena, he would complete this painting. He would also strive to become a skilled painter. Then Tenma followed Doko to the sanctuary. The church minions were still waiting for the day Alone awakened to complete their scheme. The sanctuary in Greece had been the land of Athena's saints since the mythological era, protectors of peace and justice for the world. The Pope governed that land and commanded the saints of the 88 constellations. At the very center of the sanctuary were the 12 zodiac houses protected by the gold saints. Right behind the Pope's hall, in Athena's chamber, was Athena herself, who had descended to Earth to watch over the sanctuary. This was the training ground, where everyone trained very hard. Among these new recruits, those chosen to become saints could be counted on one hand. Seeing that Tenma had just arrived, a kid came to challenge him. The lackeys around him wanted to stop him because Tenma was personally brought back by Gold Saint Doko and possessed Cosmo. However, the kid wouldn't back down because he was Yato, the closest to becoming a saint here. Tenma stepped forward. He had heard rumors that this Yato was an arrogant one, and so the two began to fight. In just a few moves, Yato had thoroughly beaten Tenma, so becoming a saint of Athena was such a difficult and arduous journey. Yato then advised him to go back home and farm vegetables and raise fish, saying Doko had made a mistake choosing Tenma. Tenma couldn't swallow this anger and took it out on the stone slab. Doko had returned after his reconnaissance mission. Tenma had been here for several months, but still couldn't break the rock in front of him. He didn't understand why he could do it on that rainy day, but couldn't now. Doko said it was all because he still didn't understand the source of destruction. First, we should understand that everything in the world is made of atoms. Everything in the universe was created from the Big Bang. The ability of saints is to strengthen the universe within oneself, the Cosmo, and make it explode. In other words, they crush atoms. That day, Tenma only focused on saving his friends, and he had unconsciously awakened the Cosmo inside him to its maximum to shatter that huge rock. In other words, if he concentrated energy on the point he wanted to destroy, everything would succeed. Doko reminded Tenma of his promise that he had vowed to become a saint and return, and fortunately, he would stay at this sanctuary for a while. He would watch Tenma's progress day by day. With that, he left. Tenma remembered his promise to his friends and figured that Alone must have painted many pictures by now, so he resolved to keep trying. Suddenly, he felt as if Alone was nearby. When he approached and grabbed that person's hand, it turned out to be a girl. He knew her name was Sasha, but she didn't understand how he knew her name. Tenma mentioned the past. He, and Alone had all lived together in an orphanage. In his hand was still the flower bracelet she had made. Finally, the girl remembered everything. How could she forget the gentle Alone and the stubborn Tenma? Actually, since coming here, she had never forgotten everyone. But Tenma didn't understand why Sasha was here. Before she could explain, a monster emerged from the ground trying to grab her. Because he saved her, Tenma was severely injured. The monster said he came here to capture the goddess Athena. He was the Great Worm. He loved hearing little girls scream. He ignored Tenma's struggling, letting the boy scream as he pleased. But with his power, he probably couldn't even destroy these worms. The power of friendship within Tenma surged. He immediately burst into tears and then punched through everything binding him. The demon didn't understand. Clearly, Tenma wasn't a saint yet, but he already had Cosmo. He used his strongest technique on a kid like Tenma, making him collapse to the ground. Then he trampled on him at will. At that moment, Sasha stood up with the intention to stop him. The demon seemed to have found his prey. Gold Saint Ares Shin appeared just in time to save them. It turned out Sasha was Athena. At this moment, they were about to face an enormous crisis. 2 years later, Tenma had become much stronger and officially became a saint. Afterward, he was bestowed a cloth. When he donned the cloth, Bronze Saint Pegasus Tenma was born. From the higher-ups came information that the specters were gathering in Italy. The situation was now very serious. Tenma, as a new saint, needed to prepare mentally to fight the army of the underworld soon. To save life on this earth, he needed to sacrifice himself to protect Athena. Tenma immediately accepted the order. Even Athena Sasha gave him a victory sign. After Tenma left, Alone continued to paint every day as promised. However, the world around him seemed to have turned gray, and life seemed to have disappeared from his paintings. Everything that Alone painted would die. He was extremely distressed. And at that moment, Pandora appeared again. Perhaps his saint had been moved by Alone's suffering. That saint was painted to save everyone's souls, and those paintings were all perfect. To her, in the end, true salvation was only death. But first, Tenma needed to be saved. So she took Alone's hand and led him to a place, the cathedral in the forest. His dream was to see the painting that would make even criminals repent when standing before it. So she would grant him that wish. The always closed door in the church was now opened, and the priest was waiting. At the castle, Sasha gazed at the constellations and saw them moving very fast. Tenma had made it up here. This was Athena's palace. It was very difficult to enter. He had always wanted to tell her everything. But now that she was Athena, it was harder to meet. Sasha recalled their past as children. She always protected Alone, who had such a kind heart that he had never harmed anyone. And Tenma was always the one who protected both of them. He always ran to shield everyone. So when Sasha left, Tenma had promised to protect Alone in her place. They heard that specters were gathering near their hometown. So both were very worried about Alone's safety. As for Alone, when he entered the cathedral, he also felt something strange. He had always wanted to be saved, always wanted to see that painting. But when he saw it, he didn't understand why it looked exactly like him. The priest caught him when he felt dizzy, advising him not to look away. This was his true self, his true form of salvation. Those he had saved were also in this painting. Alone gradually approached the painting. Those he had saved, the children he had painted the other day, had all died. All because he had painted them. The people here continuously brainwashed him that death was salvation. The children who died would no longer have to fear tomorrow, no longer have to fear being bullied. Alone was brainwashed into believing that death was salvation, and he was the one to carry out that mission. At that moment, the moon that had been normal suddenly changed. That was the moment the underworld king Hades arose. The holy war had officially begun. The saints with their distinctive zodiac signs have the duty to serve the goddess Athena and protect peace on earth. After the sanctuary issued its summons, the silver saints were sent to scout the enemy. Their specialized combat techniques are said to be nearly equal to those of the gold saints. They continuously used extremely powerful attacks to eliminate the enemy. However, one managed to escape. Instead of chasing after him, the commander ordered everyone to follow him. After tracking him, he hid in a church in the forest. And there, his accomplices were already waiting. Pandora shouted for everyone to surrender. After the reconnaissance mission, only 3 warriors returned. The commander praised them for being very brave. They reported that the specters were gathering in Italy. Many mysterious deaths had occurred consecutively in the area, and the residents there were living in fear. While searching in the forest, they encountered a very suspicious church. There, they clashed with the specters and defeated all of them. However, those who returned were not warriors of Athena, but the specters themselves. They had disguised themselves to come here and take her life. The warriors quickly rushed forward to protect her. This power was clearly not that of silver saints. Those people couldn't be that strong. Their silver cloths had turned to the dark color of the underworld, exactly like the color of the surplices, because they were no longer saints. They had sacrificed themselves while fighting the specters and were resurrected by the underworld king Hades. It was unbelievable that such proud warriors would lower themselves to become Hades's minions. But to them, being saved from the fear of death in exchange for Athena's life was completely worth it. They charged forward as if determined to take Athena's life. Doko and Shin wanted to rush forward to fight, but Sasha stopped them. She felt great pity for her subordinates who had been exploited by the enemy and departed from this world, and so she successfully purified them with her divine technique. Athena was so sad that she shed tears. Doko asked the Pope's permission to summon forces and requested the opportunity to battle the specters because they had harmed their brethren. And so the Pope granted Doko and Shin the authority to select Silver Saint forces to prepare for the journey to Italy. Their target was the city near the church in the forest that the 3 warriors had just mentioned. Hades was certainly there. He advised everyone to be careful. And so Doko went to the warriors to summon soldiers. The goddess Athena wished them well. This mission was to gather information about Hades's movement. He didn't want anyone to die in vain, especially Yato. He had just become a saint, so he hoped he wouldn't push himself too hard. However, Yato wouldn't back down. He was determined to use all his strength to protect the goddess Athena and do better than Tenma. Athena watched everyone from above. Tenma guessed she must be very worried about their homeland and about Alone. She looked at him, and he looked back at her. He promised to protect Alone. And so Tenma followed everyone toward the forest. The scenery here was very familiar. Could it be that Hades had been resurrected right in his own homeland? He worried whether Alone was safe. When he saw a massive pillar of energy emanating from the city, Tenma rushed ahead. When he arrived, everything was engulfed in flames. Tenma held firm to the belief that Alone was still alive and rushed to save everyone. He ran to the familiar house, but the place was already drenched in blood. Seeing this, he was utterly shocked. Suddenly, the demon wolf appeared. He came here to celebrate Hades' awakening. He used the Howl of Hell to attack Tenma, but he was able to block it. He didn't understand. Clearly Tenma was just a kid with the status of a bronze saint. Yet he could absorb the Howl of Hell. At this moment, Tenma was very angry. He immediately used a devastating blow against him. The painting drawn by Alone fell down. Tenma gritted his teeth, swearing he would never forgive Hades. Alone also sensed that Tenma had returned, and they had fulfilled their promise from long ago. Finally, Alone had found a perfect red to paint Tenma. He had to meet Tenma to paint his portrait as promised 2 years ago. Tenma still didn't understand why this was happening in his own homeland. He would never forgive Hades. From above, a specter along with Hades appeared. Tenma met Alone again, but now he had turned dark. He couldn't understand how Alone, who used to be such a gentle person, and the two of them had always been together like real brothers, was now Hades. Long ago, Sasha had made 3 bracelets for the 3 of them. Because she would soon be taken away, she poured all her hopes and sincere prayers into making these bracelets so they wouldn't forget her. Even though they couldn't be together, she still wanted them to meet again. And so the 3 of them promised to meet again, and these bracelets would always connect them. But now, Hades had chosen to be reborn in Alone's body. Tenma found this ridiculous. Alone was very happy because Tenma hadn't changed at all, still the same as 12 years ago. On Alone's hand was still the bracelet that Sasha had made herself. Now Tenma had returned as a saint, and Alone had also become a famous painter who could save his works through salvation. With his own hands, he held up the painting of Tenma from 2 years ago. Now he would continue to complete the rest with a true red. He conjured a sea of blood and dipped his brush into it. Tenma rushed forward wanting to stop Alone, but in the end he collapsed in the sea of fire. Alone's blonde hair was gradually turning pure black. He shed tears and turned away. Doko stood nearby, not understanding why Alone would attack his own best friend. Alone answered that it was because he had realized that death was salvation. And so Doko resolved to defeat Hades. Hades' warrior wouldn't allow that, so he would be his opponent. The two immediately engaged in fierce combat. His Cosmo was comparable to that of Athena's gold saints. Shin stopped Doko. They still had a mission to complete, and now was not the time to be angry. Pegasus and Unicorn had both been killed, but they couldn't do anything at this moment. The ground shook violently. The entire city had died. Alone's best friend had also died. This was also the end of the person named Alone. The Holy War had only just begun. All the specters had been assembled. The underworld king Hades had fully awakened. Each saint has a distinctive constellation in the sky and wears their own cloth. In other words, the constellations are the source of the saint's power. When a constellation disappears, that saint also disappears. The Pegasus constellation was eliminated by Alone. Alone, now Hades, commanded his specters to take the lives of the saints and Athena. Then adorn this world with a peaceful black color. First, they must destroy the sanctuary. A specter was ordered to summon forces to move to Athena's sanctuary. They would show the saints the true power of the 108 stars. While Alone was painting, a specter came to him, wanting him to show his right arm. There was a scar on it. The specter was very angry, guessing that the scar was caused by Doko, so he swore to make Doko pay. Yato woke up. Everything was completely devastated. Before him was an extremely gloomy church. Seeing Tenma dead beside him, Yato desperately shook him, hoping he would come back to life. In her dream, Athena saw herself meeting Alone again. But between them, only death remained. She tried to reach out and call to him, but Alone had vanished into the deep darkness. She woke up with a start. The room at the top was still quiet. A subordinate came to report to her that Gold Saint Arishin and Gold Saint Libra Doko had returned from Italy. They disappointedly reported that they had failed. 3 silver saints and 1 bronze saint were injured, and 2 bronze saints had lost their lives. The town near the sanctuary in the forest had been wiped clean, and the area around the cathedral had become Hades' territory, and the person chosen to be Hades' vessel was named Alone. Hearing this, Athena froze. She asked for the names of the 2 bronze saints who had fallen. Doko reported that they were Bronze Saint Unicorn Yato and Bronze Saint Pegasus Tenma. Hearing this, Athena swallowed her grief. She ordered the sanctuary's defenses to be tightened according to the Pope's directive and prepared to stop them. Afterward, she thanked her 2 subordinates for their hard work. She wanted them and the other silver and bronze saints to rest and prepare for the upcoming battle. They saw that Athena was truly strong. Clearly she was in great sorrow but could still remain so calm. Yato was now turning Tenma over. Even though he hated Tenma, he knew that if Tenma died, the goddess Athena would surely be heartbroken. He didn't think anyone had survived. A mysterious figure approached. Yato thought it was a specter and attacked, but the person quickly dodged. It was a girl. She called Yato a fool. She advised him to quickly control his temper, or the specters would discover them. She said she was assigned by the elder to bring Tenma back. Yato didn't trust the girl before him. He didn't know who she was. She introduced herself as a warrior of Jamir named Yusuriha. She said Tenma wasn't completely dead yet, so she ordered Yato to bring Tenma with her. Then, a mysterious light absorbed them. When they came to their senses, they had arrived at Jamir, where the elder was waiting for them. Yato didn't know whether to trust this woman, but because she had great power and said Tenma wasn't completely dead, he placed all his hope in her. He had no more time to calm down. When he entered inside, he saw the destroyed cloths and thought the girl had deceived him. He immediately attacked her with his power, guessing she was a minion of Hades. He unleashed his Cosmo, demanding to know what she had done to the owners of those cloths. Then, the elder stopped Yato. He said he had come here by order of the goddess Athena to confront Hades. Though they fought on different battlefields, they were still allies. The girl reminded Yato not to disrespect the elder, but Yato still didn't believe. He wanted the elder to explain about these cloths, so the elder used his Cosmo to strip the cloth from Yato's body. He said that cloth had died and needed a large amount of blood from a saint to be revived. But when war broke out, a warrior's blood couldn't be used. The girl before them had never been trained to become a saint, but he had trained her to become a warrior. The Cosmo within her could defeat any silver saint, so she had used her own blood to soak into the armor. Then she fainted. Yato rushed to catch her. After all, she was just a girl. The elder said they were fighting with their very lives. This was the place where dead cloths were restored. He would restore Yato's cloth. After some work, the new unicorn cloth was completed. Thanks to this, Yato felt his body very light, as if power was flowing through him. The blonde girl also woke up. More importantly, they had an even bigger task to do. As the elder predicted, Tenma wasn't completely dead. The flower bracelet on his wrist was still fresh. It must have been made by the goddess Athena when she was young. He sensed the powerful Cosmo of prayer for Pegasus that Athena had placed in it. Tenma's soul was protected by that bracelet, and it was the only thing keeping his soul in his body. Currently, he was wandering in the underworld, but not for much longer. When all the petals fall, Tenma's soul will completely disappear into the underworld. Yato was willing to sacrifice himself to not break the goddess Athena's heart. For Athena, he would risk anything. The elder said the only way to save someone from the underworld was to go down there and bring them back. He drew his sword and said Tenma would have to die. But in the end, he didn't strike. He handed the sword to Yato, telling him to take it down to fight. Because the living cannot go to the underworld, he gave him this sword. The sword contained the blood and prayers of the goddess Athena from the ancient holy war. It was a divine sword that could protect him for a while, just like the flower bracelet on Pegasus's hand. So the elder led Yato to the warrior's path down to the underworld. The blonde girl also followed, sent by the elder to assist. Now, their mission was to find Tenma as quickly as possible. The people here were all heading in the same direction toward the entrance to the underworld, the path leading to the realm of the dead. Anyone who passed through would never be resurrected and would suffer forever. These people must have all been killed by alone and were from Tenma's hometown. At this moment, Tenma woke up. He was bound tightly by chains. A specter approached. He said Tenma was in a place between the world of the living and the underworld, which meant he was dead. He didn't understand why Tenma could still move when he should have been dead, and he guessed that the underworld king Hades had been too lenient with him. Tenma was very annoyed and kicked him. He wouldn't accept anyone saying Hades was lenient, but right now, he was no match for him. He told Tenma that one of the 3 generals of the underworld and his army were marching straight to the sanctuary. Hades would send all of Athena's people to the underworld. At that moment, Yato found Tenma. The two immediately attacked the guards to free Tenma. However, that specter had returned. He approached Yusuriha, using his scream magic to strangle and try to kill her. Fortunately, Yato stood in front of her, because in his heart, men must protect weak women. Tenma warned Yato to be careful, as his power was very dangerous. It turned out that the sound waves emitted from his mask weren't ordinary sound waves. Legend has it that they were created from grass that grew beneath gallows, and anyone who heard it scream would die. And he had just tried to use it to kill Yusuriha. Yato couldn't accept that he dared attack a weak woman, so he rushed up and punched him. However, his punch couldn't defeat him, because he believed the underworld king Hades wouldn't care about someone as insignificant as Yato, so he could kill him anytime. But Yato wasn't the type to be easily bullied. He and Yusuriha coordinated. First, they unchained Tenma, allowing Tenma to rush forward and unleash hundreds of punches simultaneously, sending that guy to heaven. Yato was very annoyed. Clearly, he only intended to save Tenma, but ended up in a heap of trouble. Afterward, he explained to Tenma that the bracelet from Athena that Tenma wore had saved his life. But if all the petals withered, he would truly die. Yusuriha reminded them that there wasn't much time and they should leave quickly. Tenma remembered that the specter earlier had said an army was marching toward the sanctuary, and now he needed to be resurrected quickly. Currently, he couldn't be resurrected immediately, but had to go deeper into the underworld to complete some important tasks. The Elder said that task was extremely important and would change the entire course of the war. On Hades' side, he was arrogantly thinking that Athena was nothing but a puppet for him to manipulate. All peace had vanished after Hades picked up his brush and painted them. At this moment, Pandora called him over, saying she needed his help. She apologized for disturbing him while he was enjoying himself, but she had just received news that the Celestial General had been assassinated on the way to the underworld, a path under their jurisdiction. Before departing, he had left word that they had captured someone who looked like the Pegasus Saint, and she knew well that he had personally killed the Pegasus Saint. But she still felt something was wrong. After all, the Pegasus Saint had died, and furthermore, the Pegasus constellation had disappeared from the star map. At this moment, Yuzuriha was helplessly running toward a mission that could turn the tide of this holy war. Because one of the 3 leaders of the Spectre army was marching toward the sanctuary, he had to quickly resurrect to protect Sasha. However, Yato stopped him, saying he must call Sasha the goddess Athena and not be disrespectful. And so the two suddenly started fighting each other. Tenma knew Yato came here this time to help him resurrect, while Yato immediately grabbed his collar, lecturing him that he didn't come here to play around. This was something that had to be done. Yato recounted everything from Tenma being killed by Hades, then Yuzuriha appearing, and then all of them having to go to Jamir. Yuzuriha interrupted the argument between the two. That matter could be resolved later. Their priority now was to find a deeper path into the underworld, and so all 3 continued running. The bracelet on Tenma's wrist contained the prayers of the goddess Athena, but when the flowers on the bracelet withered, he would also leave this world. Therefore, he was determined not to be stuck here and must return at any cost. After observing everything, Alone concluded that Sasha was the goddess Athena. He asked Pandora about the specters marching toward the sanctuary. She reassured him that he didn't need to worry. This time, one of the 3 most powerful leaders was leading the specters. The sanctuary to him was merely a stage for a puppeteer to perform. When she saw the constellations in the sky being destroyed one by one, Pandora guessed that everything had officially begun. The saints were being taken down one by the puppeteer. Even so, they were still determined to fight, not letting the specters advance deep into the sanctuary. However, to him, they were all just toys. Their bodies were bound by invisible strings he controlled, preventing them from moving as they wished, and they fell one after another. The soldiers reported to the puppeteer that they had attacked the guardian saints. They were confident that the sanctuary was in their hands after the previous encounters. He arrogantly believed that the power of the saints was nothing to fear. Suddenly, they felt many rose petals flying around them. All paths leading to the sanctuary were covered by those petals. 2 minions tried to step forward, thinking the flowers couldn't possibly stop them. But immediately, both coughed blood and collapsed. The minions advised the specter not to advance further. These were deep crimson roses with extremely potent toxins. Just a light touch was enough to bring down a specter. But the puppeteer didn't listen. The one greeting them was none other than the Gold Saint of Pisces. He was one of the 12 powerful gold saints from the distant zodiac, possessing an exceptionally beautiful and elegant appearance. To the Pisces Gold Saint, they were foolish to walk in here seeking death. He warned that if they wanted to end up like those 2 underlings, they should enter his territory. But if they wanted to live, the only option was to run. However, the specters were not afraid and charged forward. Naturally, they immediately collapsed among the poisonous rose sea. They didn't understand why he could stand among the poisonous roses unharmed. Because just like those flowers, the Pisces Gold Saint carried poison in his body. Seeing the red smoke rising from the rocky hills around the sanctuary, Shin guessed it was the demonic rose fragrance of the Pisces Gold Saint. The outer defense system of the sanctuary was stable, and perhaps they would be ready to engage in battle in time. Several other Gold Saints were also participating in command. All thanks to the rose battle line of the Pisces Gold Saint, the specters couldn't pass through that garden of death. Shin knew a story about the Pisces Gold Saint. His house was the last zodiac house, located right next to the Pope's Hall. Because the area around the house was covered with demonic roses to deal with intruders, the guardian of this house also had to be like those flowers, possessing toxins in his body and complete immunity. The Pisces Gold Saint was a prime example. Even his blood contained poison. With his beautiful and elegant face, he was admired by many, but he rarely initiated contact with others, perhaps fearing that the poison in his body would harm them. The minion of the puppeteer specter finally bowed and accepted orders. He declared that this time he would personally take action. Immediately after, he arrogantly jumped down in front of the Pisces Gold Saint, acting as if the poison from the demonic rose garden was nothing to him. He even complimented the fragrance in this garden as pleasant. The Pisces Gold Saint only gently replied that lowly creatures indeed couldn't distinguish between fragrance and poison. The specter immediately charged forward, determined to destroy the beautiful face of the Gold Saint. But at that moment, Pisces released a black rose that could destroy anything it touched. That was the ultimate deadly technique of the Pisces Gold Saint. The attack startled the specter into fleeing. However, Pisces only gently advised him not to waste his effort. No matter where he hid, he couldn't escape the Black Rose. He even complimented him for being able to endure the demonic rose garden without collapsing. But the specter immediately turned the tables, loudly proclaiming that it was the Gold Saint's roses that were useless. Immediately after, the roses suddenly withered. A strange pungent smell rose around the flowers. That was the intense fragrance technique of the specter. He triumphantly declared that his fragrance was many times stronger than Pisces. Just inhaling a little was enough to paralyze an opponent's 5 senses, knock them unconscious, and make them collapse. The fragrance spread too fast. Pisces worried it would overpower the demonic rose scent and blow straight into the sanctuary. But even more dangerous was the village still ahead of the sanctuary. He absolutely couldn't let the toxic gas reach there. Pisces created a vortex to draw all the toxic gas toward himself. In the village, the people were extremely confused when the sunset sky suddenly turned a strange pale purple. They feared that the saints would only care about protecting Athena and abandon them. But a little girl spoke up in defense. She had met the Pisces Gold Saint before. He had promised to protect this village, and she believed him. Meanwhile, Pisces continued absorbing all the toxic gas. The specter lost control, not knowing what Pisces was planning, and kept charging madly forward. A thin red mist had surrounded him at some point. The specter thought he had cornered Pisces, but the Pisces Gold Saint only smiled slightly. He was foolish to think this kind of poison could affect him. He had lived with the demonic rose's toxins for so many years, to the point that his own blood had become poison. Pisces then used his blood to create countless red thorns, piercing straight into the opponent's body. Because the toxic gas had neutralized the rose fragrance, Pisces couldn't rely on the flower scent to attack, so he had to directly inject his poisonous blood into the specter's body. The result was that he collapsed immediately. The puppeteer specter smiled with amusement again. The sight of Pisces dancing among the roses, red blood, and toxins made him see it as a beautiful performance. He declared that from now on he would turn Pisces into his own exquisite puppet. And this time, he would truly take action. The puppeteer unleashed his technique. A massive tornado rose up, sweeping all of the Pisces Gold Saint's demonic roses into the sky. Then, he successfully bound him with his demonic puppet strings. With that, he ordered his minions to advance into the sanctuary while he held him down. Since he heard there was a village before the sanctuary, he wanted to destroy that village first. Hearing this, Pisces struggled, but all resistance was futile. He was being toyed with in the palm of his hand. Finally, Pisces broke his own arm to escape the puppet's control. The specter praised that Pisces truly lived up to his reputation as the strongest saint. But in this condition, he could hardly hold on, and his minions were all there. They would quickly destroy that village soon. However, Pisces only smiled slightly, saying the specter was truly foolish. His minions would be the ones eliminated first. The demonic roses didn't grow in just one place. Very quickly, those minions had reached the village that the specter had just mentioned to them. Seeing him right in front of them, they were already gloating, thinking they would follow the specter's orders and turn this village into a sea of blood. Very quickly, the minions smelled his fragrance. By the time they realized it, roses had already pierced their chests. Only now did they panic. That was Pisces' blood rose technique. The white rose would attach to the enemy and attack directly into their body. When the white petals completely turned red, all of the specter's minions would die. The terrifying thing wasn't the roses, but the Pisces Gold Saint himself. It seemed like the Cosmo of all the specter's minions had completely disappeared. He burst into mad laughter. Pisces didn't understand why he was laughing when all his minions were dead. The specter had now completely gone mad, thinking that the Pisces Gold Saint before him was an opponent truly worth destroying. He immediately unleashed an extremely powerful attack, laughing madly while savoring the Pisces Gold Saint's pain. A red blood mist appeared surrounding him, but he only found it interesting. Now what mattered was whether the Pisces Gold Saint would kill him first or he would finish him first. Pisces had made it clear to him that he could break his arms, his legs, or destroy his face, but he would not let him enter the sanctuary. A universe appeared. Pisces used his ultimate Crimson Thorn technique, launching continuous attacks at the specter. Facing that attack, he still stood tall, as if nothing happened. He couldn't believe someone as handsome as Pisces would be such a formidable opponent. However, he felt Pisces still wasn't strong enough, still not enough to resist and show him true power. Pisces had been defeated and the rose petals had vanished into the air. The specter only felt he was indeed an interesting puppet. In the village, the little girl sensed that something had happened to Pisces. However, her father still consoled her not to worry because Pisces was a powerful gold saint. Seeing the peaceful, beautiful village that Pisces had tried to protect, the specter was determined to destroy it. The village exploded as he was determined to destroy it. The villagers fled in terror. The little girl's father was pinned under the rocks. Even though she tried to save him, he still told her not to worry about him, but to be happy. If she went to the sanctuary, someone would help her. He told her to keep running and try to survive. The little girl stood up in tears, still thinking this couldn't be real. The Pisces gold saint should have protected them because he had promised. No matter the circumstances, she still continued to believe in him. At that time, she had been running in the rain, worried that the flower petals she was carrying would wilt before she could deliver them to the Pope. But at that moment, the Pisces gold saint had appeared and given her his cloak. The little girl wanted to come closer to thank him, but he advised her not to come near him. She thought he was a distant person, but her father explained that he had his reasons for keeping away from everyone. He thought his body would harm those around him. He had spent many years building resistance to the toxins, and his nails and blood had become deadly poison. He was afraid of endangering others. At that moment, the little girl thought she had understood the Pisces gold saint's heart. She wanted everyone to know that he was a kind person. Just like that day, he was always standing alone. The specter had appeared before the little girl. Seeing the rose on her chest, he guessed she knew Pisces, so he decided to send her to join him. The little girl shouted in his face that the Pisces saint would never lose to a specter like him. So the specter immediately attacked, wanting to kill the little girl on the spot because he didn't want to waste time. Gold Saint Shin stood in front to shield her. He said he would handle things here, and the little girl just needed to run away quickly. By now, the Pisces gold saint had collapsed. Even Aries had appeared, and the specter guessed he came here to avenge Pisces. And Aries Shin, the first of the 12 zodiac houses, thought he should be the one to stop him. At this moment, the specter had no time to play around. He made the invisible strings control Shin's body. This time he would deal with things quickly, just by breaking his neck. While he was reveling in the sadistic pleasure of torture, a black rose had planted itself in the ground. Immediately after, the Pisces gold saint appeared, apologizing to Shin for causing trouble. Clearly the specter had broken all the bones in his body, but he was still alive. The specter was also very surprised that Pisces was still alive. He thought if Pisces had died earlier, his death would have been beautiful. Until now, Pisces had always kept himself isolated because he thought his blood would poison everyone. He believed he would live like this no matter what he looked like. His calm demeanor always hurt his honor. He still hadn't shown the specter his full power. The specter became even more crazed. Pisces continued using his ultimate Crimson Thorn technique. The specter arrogantly thought that technique had no power against him, but he was wrong. The Crimson Thorn absorbed the owner's blood, then transformed it from mist into thorns. With such quantity and power, Pisces was truly incredible. When Shin realized it, perhaps Pisces had used all his blood in the attack against the specter, and so Pisces was exhausted. The specter thought Pisces was dead. Aries Shin would be his next opponent. However, Shin only calmly stood up. He didn't need to fight someone like that, and reminded the specter to look at his own chest. It turned out the demonic rose that Pisces had been holding in his mouth was now on the specter's chest. That rose wasn't a demonic rose, but a white rose. By absorbing the specter's blood, it had become a red flower, the blood rose. That white rose had absorbed all of Pisces' poisonous blood and turned red. Pisces' goal wasn't to use the Crimson Thorn, but to use the blood rose to attack. So the specter had failed because he underestimated Pisces' vital force. He couldn't believe he had lost his life because of just a drop of poisonous blood. He went mad, determined to blow away all the saints and this village just because of the humiliation. However, a crystal wall had been erected, covering the village that Pisces had tried to protect, so no specter could destroy it. The specter then coughed blood and died. Everything had ended. The little girl wanted to rush to Pisces, but he stopped her. Looking at the petals that had blown all the way here, Pisces was deeply moved. He had always been with these lonely roses, but now, perhaps this was the first time he felt that these flowers were truly beautiful. The church bells rang. Shin and the little girl returned together. The little girl followed him, asking if this battle continued, would the saints lose their lives? People like Pisces would fight until they were wounded, and the little girl didn't want to see the saints get hurt at all. She also didn't want Pisces to die. Shin thought they didn't fight to die. Their most important duty was to protect life and love on this earth. He was just fighting to fulfill his duty. Even if death or something was waiting for him on the other side, he would still continue fighting until his last breath. Suddenly a strange sound came, saying that Pisces' death was meaningless. The voice introduced itself. Using teleportation, a person stood before them. He introduced himself as coming from Jamir and requested to be quickly taken to meet the Pope. At this rate, the sanctuary would fall. It seemed that Spectre had taken the life of the Pisces Gold Saint, but at the same time, his Cosmo and his minions had also disappeared. Hades in the distance was still hesitating, not knowing whether the freed Spectre's souls would come to him, whether he could free them from the chains of life, pain, and suffering once again. He summoned the next Spectre, a warrior from the eternal peace of death. When the boy was brought before the Pope, He found everything absurd. Shin clenched his fist, frustrated. Then his friend's death had become completely meaningless. The goddess Athena had also prepared a next step. She used a protective spell surrounding the entire sanctuary area and blocking Hades' Cosmo upon his resurrection. But maintaining it would greatly drain her strength. The only thing they could do was defeat Hades and end this holy war as quickly as possible. The boy had an important message related to this, from the elder. They just needed to wait one more day, and they would bring good news to the goddess Athena, along with the Pegasus Saint. According to the elder, they were heading to the Sapindus tree. According to the elder, it did not exist for the specters of the underworld. That meant even Spectre Thanatos would be resurrected. And it also meant they would never be able to defeat the specters. However, according to the elder, the Sapindus tree held the secret to subduing them, those considered immortal. And they were walking on the path that specters used to descend to the underworld. If they followed them, Yuzuriha thought they could quickly reach their destination. So they continued to advance forward. However, from the moment they found the exit, they arrived at a desolate place. There, a starving wolf was waiting for them. It was Cerberus. It was here to guard against intrusion into this area. Yuzuriha reminded them to be careful of its 3 heads. Yato charged forward. He wouldn't let his 2 friends fight without wearing their cloths, so he would deal with this creature. He used his technique to fight it, with Yuzuriha providing support. But its 3 heads were really unfair. If only they could attack all 3 heads at the same time. This time, Tenma decided to help. He would attack all 3 heads at once and defeat it. And very quickly, he had taken it down. They were in the 7th prison, the place that punished the greedy, thieves, and fraudsters. The path they had just taken led straight here. Tenma couldn't believe that someone who used to love light and colors so much like Alone was now in a world like this. A circle appeared in the space. Alone appeared, saying he came here to meet Tenma. Alone's hair had turned black, and Yato didn't understand why the Underworld King had come here. Since this was a good opportunity, Yuzuriha was determined not to let Hades escape. She rushed to attack, but it was completely useless. On the contrary, Hades thought she was foolish for getting in the way between him and Pegasus. He advised her to know her limits. Alone approached and pressed close to Tenma's cheek. He loved it when he resisted. Although he was saved by Sasha's hands, Alone was certain that his being here was not just a coincidence. Nevertheless, Alone made an offer for Tenma to join him alongside the specters to change this world. He wanted to turn this world into a peaceful and quiet place, and would decorate the earth with darkness. Yato frantically warned Tenma not to listen to him. However, he continued to brainwash Tenma. He wanted to defeat Athena and achieve eternal happiness. Fortunately, Tenma was very clear-headed. He released Hades' hands. He would never listen to him about turning this world into a realm of death. He would stand alongside Sasha. He had now become a saint of the goddess Athena. He would protect the world that all 3 of them once cherished. And so Alone left, promising to meet him again in a future battle. And he definitely would not go easy on him. This time, the 2 promised to have a fight when they met again. Alone left, promising to meet Tenma next time at the sanctuary. That would be the reunion of 3 friends after many years. After everything, Yato stepped forward. He naively thought that they could have ended this war just now. But Tenma wasn't joking earlier and punched Yato directly. Yato explained that he was just trying to joke to ease the tension. This time, the 3 arrived before the Blood Waterfall. Located between the 6th prison and the 7th prison was the Blood Waterfall. Right above the waterfall was what absorbed nutrients from it, the Sapindus tree of the underworld. So the 3 climbed up the cliff to reach the tree. Since setting foot here, Tenma had always had an extremely strange feeling. He reminded his 2 friends that the waterfall had stopped flowing as if time had stopped. It seemed like some mortal or specter had wandered into this place. The person who emerged from within the Blood Waterfall was the Virgo Gold Saint. He asked Tenma whether he truly wanted to continue opposing the Lord of the Underworld. Tenma completely didn't understand why a Gold Saint would appear in the Underworld, at Hades' sanctuary instead of Athena's sanctuary. Doko reported to his comrades that he would pass through the Pisces temple. He had received news from Jaimir that all specters were immortal. Although Pisces had defeated the Spectre army, they absolutely must not let their guard down. And the good news was that Doko's student, Pegasus Tenma, was still alive. However, he was trapped in the underworld, so Doko couldn't stop worrying until Tenma safely resurrected. At this moment, his comrade mentioned the Virgo Gold Saint, a very suspicious person. Since becoming a Gold Saint, he had never left his temple. He was always surrounded by countless rumors and could also appear anywhere. If bought by the enemy, he would likely be an extremely terrifying opponent. Even Doko couldn't stop doubting. He didn't understand why Virgo always sat meditating in one place, and also didn't know whether he truly participated in the Holy War or not. In the underworld, Tenma sensed that this Gold Saint's Cosmo belonged to his side, but at the same time carried the feeling of an enemy. At this moment, the Virgo Gold Saint continued to mutter. He believed that Athena's mistake was the beginning of this war. Tenma didn't understand why a gold saint could betray the goddess Athena. And more importantly, if he truly betrayed her, what could a child like Tenma do? Nevertheless, Tenma was still determined to take his life with his own hands. He charged forward to attack, but his blows were completely useless. According to Virgo, Tenma's fate had been intertwined with this holy war since ancient times. The Pegasus saint had always fought alongside Athena in countless holy wars. The truth was that Pegasus was the only mortal who had ever defeated a god, namely the underworld king Hades. In this reincarnation, Tenma was just a clumsy, hot-tempered, and emotional child. The fact that he had to participate in the holy war proved that the world could no longer be saved. Tenma didn't care. No matter what, he would choose to fight to protect the Earth and Sasha. But his weak punches couldn't defeat the Virgo Gold Saint. Another universe appeared before his eyes. Virgo, the seeker of truth, asked Tenma the reason he fought. Tenma tried to give some slogans, but they were all meaningless before the Gold Saint's eyes. He believed the boy had no foundation, no solid reason. In fact, what Hades said seemed even more correct. If humans only lived in suffering, with a past full of despair, then death might be liberation. Virgo decided to let the flames of hell burn Tenma, using his ultimate technique, the 6 paths of reincarnation. Among the 6 realms, the human realm was the deepest level where humans endured all suffering. Tenma saw a mortal city full of tired people, starving children, faces without smiles, and the cold discrimination of society. At the final moment, the image of 3 children playing appeared before his eyes. Next was the heavenly realm, where falling into the underworld would be extremely dangerous. Pegasus had reincarnated many times as Athena's saint, fought with countless gods, and had even nearly defeated the lord of the underworld. Perhaps that was why Hades had hidden his true body in the Garden of Eden, then reincarnated into a completely pure body, which was Tenma's best friend, Alone. Tenma collapsed. Could it be that Alone becoming Hades was his own fault? He completely didn't understand anything about past lives or destiny. He only knew one thing. The reason he continued fighting until now was to protect Alone and Sasha. The promise from childhood had guided him. No matter how many times he reincarnated or what era he lived in, he would fight to the end to protect his most important friends. At this moment, Virgo began to feel interested. He left his meditation posture and stood up, deciding to subdue Tenma with the ultimate truth. Tenma's body gradually lost sensation. Anyone hit by Virgo's technique would lose all 5 senses. When a soul was stripped of its senses, they would completely disappear. If Tenma disappeared, Sasha's will to protect the Earth, that is Athena's, would also be erased. Tenma calmed down. He wouldn't let that happen. So he madly charged forward to attack Virgo, shattering his illusion. The battle had ended. Tenma had completely broken through Virgo's illusion layer. It turned out the battle just now had only taken place inside his head. The only thing that survived in the underworld, the sapindus tree, had connected with Tenma's cosmo and blossomed and bore fruit. The fruit that the Elder of Jamir had been pursuing fell out. Virgo advised him to take as many as possible, the more the better, and he promised to meet him again on the surface. The illusion ended. Yado and Yuzuriha had also awakened. They caught Tenma, who was battered and fell from the tree. Tenma presented the sapindus fruits. His mission was to bring them back. Only 1 flower remained on the bracelet. They needed to return as quickly as possible, or he would die. Yado carried Tenma and ran frantically. Virgo returned to report to Athena. He had never had sight, but he could sense many things and had many doubts. On this land, all his senses except for sight were excellent, and he was always filled with doubt and suffering like that. According to his assessment, Tenma was a very dedicated person, a fool but also very human. Hearing this, Athena smiled with satisfaction. Seeing that Athena seemed very tired from maintaining this sanctuary, he had a request for her. Finally, Doko had completed his mission and returned. Virgo had also left his temple. He met Doko and commented that Doko's disciple might be a bit inexperienced, but was also a good person. Yado's group had brought Tenma back. When they returned, Yado made Tenma properly greet the goddess Athena. However, when they reached the exit of the underworld, they encountered the killer beetle guarding this place. He had heard that the blood waterfall had collapsed, and it was all because of the saints, so he was here to eliminate them. Yato decided to stay behind to hold him off, while Yusuriha would take Tenma ahead because they didn't have much time. He promised her he would return to the sanctuary. Tenma woke up. The elder was beside him. He explained that he was in Jamir, and he had survived and returned. Yusuriha had also woken up, but Yato was still unconscious. Yusuriha explained they were attacked by a specter on the path to the underworld. Yato had told them to go ahead while he stayed behind. Although Tenma also really wanted to go home, he didn't want to be revived while his friend had died. At this moment, Yato in the underworld was still getting beaten up. He and the specter were fiercely fighting each other. When about to lose, Yato remembered his promise to return to the goddess Athena. So he unleashed his power. Finally, Yato also woke up. The elder guessed he had been blessed by Athena's sword. The prayer in the sword was the prayer of the goddess Athena for the sanctuary. The protective aura from the sword activated and pulled Yato back. How fortunate that all three were safe. The elder said it was too early to celebrate because there was a pursuit from the underworld. Because they had taken the fruit of the sapindus tree, the specters came here to hunt them. They were determined to wipe out Yato's group without mercy. However, when they advanced to the valley, they saw something very unusual. The path in the valley was extremely long. Then, the Virgo Gold Saint appeared. He came here to deal with the specters. The specter recognized this Cosmo. He didn't know whether Virgo was an enemy or what. Virgo appeared before him. He wanted to meet the elder. Usuriha presented the fruits of the sapindus tree. Legend had it that the specters were immortal. These fruits were from the only living thing in the underworld, the sapindus tree. It was completely opposite to the surpluses created from the minerals of the underworld. It countered the immortality of the specters. In other words, it was a weapon that could stop the souls protected by the specters' surpluses. But if left as they were still completely useless. That was also the reason Virgo was here, to turn these fruits into weapons. Everyone needed extremely strong Cosmo. In the underworld, the specter they had just killed after obtaining the sapindus fruit had come back to life. The specter thought that with the Virgo Gold Saint here, there was nothing to worry about. But the Gold Saint let the specters handle all the enemy specters by themselves because he was busy. He had to achieve power equal to the sapindus. The only one who could do that was the blind Virgo Saint. Because he was blind, he had the ability to sense more than others. Although he couldn't see Tenma's face, he knew exactly what his condition was. And he also knew that he was still wearing that tattered cloth. Tenma's cloth had been repaired into a completely new cloth. He stepped out to stop the underworld's forces. However, those he had just killed came back to life again. They were immortal warriors. As long as Hades's underworld protected them, they would keep coming back. Inside, the Virgo Gold Saint was still continuing his work. He lived in a world without light and only loved Cosmo. Finally, his life had meaning. Tenma outside was still fighting the specters. Yato rushed out to support him. Usuriha said that at this moment, the Virgo Gold Saint was purifying the rosary and refining its Cosmo. The elder had ordered them to protect this place until he finished. Tenma raised his spirit, and so the three charged into battle. No matter how hard they tried, those killed kept coming back to life. Finally, it seemed Virgo was done. His Cosmo radiated extremely powerfully. Virgo remembered the first time he met Athena from afar in a small form. In this life, Athena was born in a remote village in Italy. He thought there must be some reason. The girl was completely unaware of her Athena identity and was just an ordinary girl. He thought it was foolish that a goddess was chosen to be reborn as a human and live a life of suffering. He didn't understand how such a god could enlighten the world, until he met her doing something at the Virgo temple. He reminded her that the Pope was very worried and she shouldn't wander around. Athena had thought he couldn't see. He explained that he could sense everything, and thanks to that, he could also see the suffering of the human world whether he wanted to or not. Athena sat down, guessing that he was also suffering greatly. Her smile woke him up again. Returning to the present, he had awakened his power and destroyed the specters completely. The specter had collapsed, completely vanished, and Virgo had also regained his sight. He remarked that the specter looked younger than he thought, and the specter also looked exactly like Athena when she was young. He remembered Tenma taking care of Athena wholeheartedly. The rosary that sealed the specter's souls was complete. Now Athena's army could be equal with the specters. However, it had been exchanged for Virgo's soul. Tenma cried, not understanding, scolding Virgo as a fool. The specters who had been defeated by Pisces' white roses had come back to life, but they sensed that their recovery process took longer than usual, and he thought it was due to Athena's protective power. They also couldn't sense the Cosmo of their superior, and it seemed the village and the sanctuary were still safe. Regardless, they still believed their master couldn't be defeated by a saint. Even if something happened to him, they just needed to defeat Athena. The Taurus Gold Saint appeared. He thought the specters were truly arrogant, and their superior would never be able to resurrect again, and they would share the same fate. Under his hands, the Taurus Gold Saint. The specter was contemptuous because Taurus didn't have a rose garden like Pisces, nor did he have the ability to release poisonous roses. He didn't know what he planned to do to fight all of them. For Taurus, he only needed to cross his arms. That was indeed true. Just by crossing his arms, the specters fell one by one at his feet. Suddenly, he sensed a mysterious Cosmo in the sky heading toward the protected area. The enemy didn't even bother to hide their intentions. A specter appeared before him. He asked about the whereabouts of the Libra Gold Saint Doko. Taurus only found him arrogant for not knowing how to politely address his elders and would definitely teach him a lesson. At the Taurus Temple arena, the children were worried, not knowing where he had gone. A senior reassured them that the Taurus Gold Saint was dealing with the remaining specters outside the sanctuary, and they would train on their own. After the battle began, even saints would have to train. The kids had to learn every skill possible to prepare for battle, and be ready to face any enemy just like their master. At this moment, Taurus was still standing firmly before the Spectre. He wanted to teach him proper manners. The Spectre tried to leave but was blocked by him. He got annoyed and unleashed a black flame that would burn everything. He warned Taurus that if he didn't want to burn to ashes from his fingertips, he should let go of him. This tiny flame couldn't burn Taurus. He reminded the young one to learn to bow his head. But the Spectre remained very stubborn. He introduced himself to him as the Spectre of the Celestial Violent Star. Taurus also introduced himself to him. It was time for the two to engage in combat. Just with his arms crossed, Taurus easily handled his black flame technique. Next was one blow from him, enough to send him flying. He reminded him that his flame had too much energy. It was a black flame born of rejection and hostility. A flame that burned everything, even himself. He didn't understand whether the reason for this was because he was a specter or something else deep within him. The ground had been completely destroyed by his flames. At the arena, the children were still continuing to train, waiting for Taurus to return without seeing him. They also began to learn self-reliance. They themselves had chosen this path. The kids had all lost hope in a disaster, and it was the Taurus Gold Saint who saved them. On a rainy day, Taurus had found 3 orphan children without parents. He took the 3 kids home, where there were many other children. But one day he returned injured. He said the holy war had begun. He carried on his shoulders the mission as a saint. As long as the battle continued, he couldn't be a gentle father like before. He had to fight under the name of the Taurus Gold Saint and be ready to fall at any moment. He could take care of the children, but couldn't continue as before anymore. So the 3 kids ran after him, asking permission to become saints so he would keep them by his side. And so they trained under the Taurus Gold Saint. During that process, the youngest one felt discouraged. He only wanted to follow his 2 friends, but didn't want to fight and was very afraid of sacrifice. Today Taurus also returned with wounds. The kid clearly knew he was still too young. A pillar suddenly collapsed from above, and the Taurus Gold Saint stood to shield the children. He reminded them that if they feared the losses of the Holy War, he wouldn't stop them. They could go anywhere they wanted, but they should remember that whether becoming a saint or not participating in this war, they must become strong and kind people. That was also when the kid resolved to become a saint. Now, they had sensed Taurus's Cosmo and were very worried about him. Taurus on the battlefield was still fighting while lecturing the Spectre. The Spectre had seen through his attack secrets. Even so, Taurus still hadn't used his full power. He didn't know whether the Spectre's black flame could withstand his next massive palm strike. This one was also a formidable opponent. His black flame was the fastest among the Spectres. Now it was a competition to see who was faster, Taurus or this Spectre. Doko from afar had also sensed this Cosmo and rushed over. He saw Silver Saints collapsed on the road. They reported to him that this Spectre was too fast and they had no strength to resist him. Then they were defeated. At this moment, the Taurus Gold Saint and the Spectre were still fighting fiercely. Taurus had perhaps reached his limit and couldn't maintain his initial speed. Now his hands had been destroyed and he had lost his ability to block. It seemed even the fastest among the Gold Saints was nothing compared to this Spectre. Even so, Taurus still stood firm. He believed the Spectre's attacks didn't affect him at all. They were still too weak. The Spectre continued to attack madly. His Cosmo didn't weaken at all. This time Taurus roared, lecturing the Spectre a stream of principles, and said he was a spoiled child. The Spectre was furious, using the fire cross technique, binding Taurus's body tightly with flames. When Doko and the children arrived, the battle had already concluded. After lecturing the Spectre, he decided to shut Taurus's talkative mouth. When everyone arrived, Taurus had been bound by his flames. Doko was furious and jumped down, preparing to stand in front to confront him. The Spectre arrogantly thought Doko had arrived too late. His fire circle could control enemies. Only when the body was burned could one escape from it. It would take quite a long time for Taurus's body to burn to ashes. Doko was now full of hatred. He only wanted to kill the Spectre before him. The two immediately engaged in battle. Fortunately, the Taurus Saint was still alive. He asked Doko to step back. He didn't need help right now. He reminded him that battles between saints were always one-on-one. As long as he wanted to continue fighting, Doko was not allowed to interfere. This flame couldn't easily burn him like that. And so he had destroyed the fire cross and walked forward proudly. The children had also jumped down. The youngest one cried, saying he didn't want Taurus to die. At this moment, the Spectre seemed to remember his younger self. The kids stood before Taurus, begging him to win this battle. Taurus put on his helmet. He was determined not to lose. For these children, he would do everything. He had to become a role model for the next generation. The Spectre released 3 black flames simultaneously, seemingly without limit. But he was still no match for Taurus. He took a heavy blow, but could still stand up. He questioned Taurus why he didn't just kill him. Taurus replied that it was because he wasn't blocking his path. He didn't know what the Spectre had done for Hades, but he only saw him tormenting the Guardians and treating it as a game. He advised him that he wasn't suitable to be a Spectre. To him, Spectre or Saint didn't matter. He only fought for his own ideals. With that, he declared he would meet Taurus again in the near future. The sun had set and Taurus was also falling. He had worked hard to unleash all his power like that. Taurus was helped by the children back to the sanctuary. He came before the Pope to report. As expected, the goddess Athena's protective barrier had weakened. The messenger from Jamir reported that some specters had resurrected. They had been subdued and their bodies brought inside the barrier. Taurus also reported that there was a specter as powerful as the 3 specter generals when compared to the Sagittarius Gold Saint. As for the goddess Athena, she tried to stay calm, but clearly she wasn't well. Her barrier was enough to prevent the specters from fully resurrecting, but couldn't endure the cosmo pressure day after day forever. Athena's body and soul had nearly reached their limit. The saints had to free her from this pressure as soon as possible. The Pisces Gold Saint had died, the Virgo Gold Saint still hadn't returned, the Taurus Gold Saint was injured. This made Sagittarius extremely worried. Taurus stubbornly claimed he was fine, but when Sagittarius lightly touched him, Taurus coughed violently. Sagittarius advised him to conserve his strength. Because this was a holy war, sacrifice could come at any moment to protect the goddess. Sagittarius had been with Athena since she was small, since she opened her eyes to see the world. He was the one who brought her here. He found the goddess Athena at the village that day. But now, her older brother alone had become Hades. Sagittarius wasn't sure if his choice that year was right or wrong. When he saw Athena having to go against her gentle nature to fight, his heart ached. Because according to her words, Alone was like Pegasus Tenma back then, just an innocent boy. Suddenly, a cosmo as deep as darkness appeared. The sky immediately turned dark. Athena's protective barrier cracked open. Hades appeared, greeting Athena after not seeing her for so long. Athena recognized her childhood friend Alone. But now, he had become the underworld king Hades. He raised his hand and destroyed villages and Athena's castles. The Gold Saints also didn't expect Hades to personally enter the sanctuary. Doko still held a grudge about the day Hades destroyed their homeland, forcing them to retreat. He would never forget. Hades used a technique that prevented the saints' bodies from moving. Then he walked before Athena, saying that now he was no longer her brother. The two of them had fought for 200 years. Cherishing memories was foolish for humans. It was meaningless to live carrying the burden of sadness and despair. No matter how hard Athena tried to be human, the beautiful days of the past could never return. And the ones who took away those days were the saints. Sagittarius stood up under tremendous pressure, aiming his bow straight at Hades. Hades thought it was a rude and foolish act. He recognized Sagittarius as the one who took Athena away from the village 5 years ago. Sagittarius believed that decision was correct to protect her. But he still didn't understand why Athena was born at this time together with Alone and Pegasus Tenma, who had put their lives in danger to protect the boy whose body Hades took over that year. Hades said Athena's love for him was meaningless. To the saints, Athena's love symbolized hope. But everything was useless under Hades' hands. Sagittarius's arrow was deflected back, causing him to fall. Athena finally stepped onto the battlefield. She drew her scepter, preparing for battle. At that moment, Tenma returned, standing to block in front of her. As promised, he had returned to defeat Hades. Pained by the harsh reality, Athena drew her scepter, preparing to enter battle. Tenma had returned, but the reunion of the 3 from those days was no longer as complete as they had once hoped. Tenma took out the rosary, the item that prevented the specters from continuing to resurrect. This rosary was made from the sapindus tree, the only tree that existed in the underworld, completely opposite to the surpluses which were composed of underworld minerals. It possessed the power to suppress immortality, sealing the souls of specters protected by their surpluses. Their souls could be completely controlled by the rosary. Tenma understood clearly that Athena had chanted an ancient spell, creating a protective barrier around the sanctuary. He reassured her that everything would be fine. The Virgo Gold Saint had risked his life for Tenma, for the rosary, and also for Athena. And now, the only reason Tenma continued to fight was the promise of reunion the 3 had made years ago. However, this reunion was full of tragedy. Alone had now become Hades, wanting to harm his own sister, just as he had destroyed their homeland without any regret. A dog suddenly ran over, the same animal Alone had saved 2 years before. To Hades, the promise from years ago still held meaning. It was just that everything could no longer be as before. Hades asked Tenma whether he thought he would harm Athena without any regret. The answer was yes. Immediately, the small dog transformed into Cerberus, the 3-headed dog guarding the underworld. Tenma pulled Athena aside, realizing that the animal had never been ordinary. Hades affirmed that everything was within his calculations. He had never intended to resurrect the specters. Hades challenged Tenma to use the rosary if he wanted, because to him, death was the most peaceful medicine. Saints, specters, Athena, Tenma, and all life on Earth would eventually have to pass away. That was the mission of the underworld king Hades. Pandora, the survivor from the previous holy war, also appeared. Her soul had always served beauty. Pandora was actually the one who had cared for Alone since childhood. Since ancient times, goddesses carrying Zeus's bloodline rarely brought good things, but Athena was different. She had never done anything to make Pandora hate her. Now, Pandora and Athena officially confronted each other. Pandora criticized Athena for being reborn in a mortal body, then taking over the body of Hades' little sister, suspecting that Athena had lowered herself to control Hades when he was still a boy. Athena calmly replied that living as a human was not degradation or something to be ashamed of. To her, the days spent living with Alone and Tenma were far more precious than merely existing as a goddess. She had no schemes, only wishing to live peacefully with those she loved. Pandora rushed forward to attack Athena, but was blocked by Tenma. Hades ordered Pandora to retreat. What he needed to do now was return to the underworld castle. He had learned enough about everything, and had no reason to continue staying at the sanctuary. Tenma tried to chase after Alone, but was immediately knocked back. All his attacks now were no longer strong enough to reach Hades. Before leaving, Hades said that soon this entire world would witness a painting. The sky suddenly changed, as if becoming a giant painting. Everyone was stunned. It was the lost canvas. When the painting was complete, the entire Earth would be erased. Right after Athena disappeared, the Gold Saints didn't understand why this painting had appeared. Doko concluded that it wasn't simply a work of art. Hades could use the painting to destroy life. Shin was extremely worried about Athena and the Pope. He understood that when the lost canvas covered the entire sky, the souls of all living beings would be devoured. Tenma also realized that everything Hades painted would disappear from this world. When the painting was complete, Earth would be plunged into eternal darkness. Tenma questioned Hades that this wasn't the reason he had always painted. When he tried to charge forward again, a specter blocked his path. The Taurus Gold Saint, despite being seriously injured, still rushed forward to protect Tenma. He believed that the only hope of this world was placed in him, someone who had been Hades' close friend. As for Tenma, he was determined to become the one to stop Hades. He jumped onto the horse-drawn carriage, declaring he wouldn't give up until he could reach Alone. But Pandora cruelly knocked him down. When everything became quiet again, Pandora asked Hades the reason he came to the sanctuary, because she didn't believe he came here just to fight. Hades replied that defeating a saint in hatred was something he had to do. He also realized that Pandora wanted to protect him too much, like caging a bird. In the underworld, Thanatos' subordinates believed that Hades at this time still had too much humanity, not truly suitable to become the underworld king ruling over the realm of the dead. 3 days had passed since Alone attacked the sanctuary. Fear still shrouded this place, especially regarding the lost canvas, the work that could erase all life in the world once completed. While Tenma was still dazed with worry, Doko suddenly punched him in the head. He scolded Tenma for not being like before, advising him that if he was just going to sit there blankly, he should go do something more useful. Before, Doko had thought Tenma was dead, yet now he had not only returned, but appeared right when the underworld king Hades attacked the sanctuary. Tenma truly always surprised him. Despite his grumbling, Doko was still glad he was safe. However, Tenma was still extremely worried about the Sagittarius Gold Saint, who had been struck by Hades' own reflected arrow. He had met Sagittarius long ago and had always hoped for a chance to talk to him again, but until now he still hadn't woken up. Doko said the Pope mentioned that Hades' attack had directly damaged his soul, which was why Sagittarius remained in a coma. Though it sounded contradictory, Doko also didn't want Tenma to turn against Alone as enemies. Many years ago, the Sagittarius Gold Saint had told him about a boy who always risked his life to protect his friends. Thinking back now, Doko understood that the person he mentioned was Tenma. The Virgo Gold Saint had also said that Tenma's destiny was linked to the underworld king from ancient times. That was why Doko believed Tenma was everyone's greatest hope. He hoped Tenma would always remember his friends and move forward. Fortunately, Tenma had never changed from before until now. Thinking of the harsh trials awaiting him in the future, Doko could only silently pray for Tenma. In the underworld, a subordinate questioned Pandora about why Hades had left the sanctuary alone. Pandora remained silent. Indeed, Hades was becoming more like a true underworld king each day, stronger, colder, and more worthy of that position. However, Pandora still noticed that Hades was clinging to the past. Suddenly, 2 gods appeared behind Pandora. They were Thanatos, the god of death, and Hypnos, the god of sleep. Pandora immediately knelt down, explaining that she had done nothing to offend them. The 2 gods said they had already arranged everything in the underworld, but Pandora had disrupted the situation with the incident at the sanctuary. Therefore, they punished her and warned that if things exceeded their capacity, they would directly assist Hades. The only goal now was to complete the lost canvas and end all disturbances in Hades' mind. Pandora just needed to eliminate the causes making Hades uneasy. Gritting her teeth, Pandora decided to target Athena and those occupying an important place in Hades' heart. She opened the underworld gate, summoning 2 professional assassins to set out and assassinate Tenma, destroying his soul so he could never reincarnate again. The 2 promised to kill Tenma in the darkness, so fast that he wouldn't even realize he had died. Meanwhile, the Taurus Gold Saint sent a gift to the Virgo statue. The Holy War was gradually reaching its climax. Athena and the Pope were preparing for the general offensive. The final battle was very near, and the Pope had also received the rosary purified by the Virgo Gold Saints Cosmo. Taurus swore they would dye that rosary with specter souls for revenge. With that, he put on his helmet and turned to leave, wishing he could have witnessed Virgo's power on the battlefield with his own eyes, but it was no longer possible. That day, Tenma was called by Taurus to train with the children he cared for. Taking this opportunity, Taurus wanted to teach Tenma a lesson. He noticed that Tenma had been distracted lately and wanted him to prove his fighting spirit was still intact. Though Tenma's potential was great, currently he still wasn't strong enough to face Hades. Tenma needed to train much more, and so Taurus put Tenma through merciless training until evening. The children following Taurus suddenly collapsed one by one. Not from exhaustion, but from nightmare sound waves, the technique of the 2 assassins. When everyone fell asleep, they began to act. One couldn't believe that what made Pandora afraid was just a bronze saint. Just as he was about to strike Tenma, Taurus suddenly woke up. He absolutely wouldn't allow anyone to take Tenma's life. The assassin was shocked that the nightmare sound waves had no effect. It turned out Taurus had damaged his own eardrums so he couldn't hear anything. He quickly knocked down one, but the other attacked from behind. To resist the sound waves, Taurus stabbed through his own arm to stay conscious. Though he didn't fall asleep, his nervous system was still heavily affected. The 2 assassins planned to kill the Gold Saint as well and bring his head to Pandora. Taurus's old wounds flared up again. He was continuously pressured by them. But after everything, Taurus still stood firm, lifted the assassin up and declared he was nothing compared to him, then finished him on the spot. The remaining one couldn't understand why Taurus could be so stubborn. The last assassin unleashed his ultimate technique, using his singing voice to attack the spirit. The sound crept into Taurus's consciousness, finally making him collapse. When he approached Tenma to finish him, the image of the children Taurus had protected appeared in his mind. They still had their whole lives ahead of them. Thinking so, Taurus forced himself to stand once more, unleashing a massive Cosmo wave, knocking away the assassin. Just as the last one was about to strike, another specter appeared and stopped him. He believed Hades wouldn't be pleased with this approach, then forced the assassin to reveal who gave the order. After being interrogated, he had to confess that the order came from Pandora, and Hades was completely unaware because he was focused on completing the lost canvas. Pandora had begun to suspect Hades and wanted to eliminate any threats that might affect him. The specter declared he only served Hades, not Pandora. When Tenma woke up and saw Taurus collapsed, he frantically rushed over thinking the specter was the killer. But he stopped Tenma, saying he didn't kill Taurus. He announced that Pandora was currently controlling all the specters, and the assassinations targeting Tenma were just the beginning. If Tenma wanted to know more truth, he should find out himself. With that, he flew into the sky, considering his debt to Taurus repaid. Taurus's death left the children in extreme grief. They burst into tears, not understanding why he had to leave at this moment. Last night, the Taurus Gold Saint had sacrificed himself. He was too severely wounded and could no longer struggle to continue fighting. Everyone didn't understand why he had fought outside the sanctuary. They heard he wanted to protect a bronze saint who was being attacked by specters. That bronze saint was none other than the Pegasus Saint Tenma. Tenma carried many emotions in his heart: regret, guilt, unwillingness, and anger. Each emotion rose up within him one after another. Tenma realized he had no more time to waste. He shouldn't have appeared at the sanctuary from the beginning. At this moment, everyone at the sanctuary was extremely busy. Despite their efforts, they still couldn't find Tenma. Everyone only hoped that Taurus's sacrifice wouldn't cause him to do something foolish. In this situation, Tenma's act of leaving the sanctuary could be seen as desertion. Doko silently thanked Shin, the only person he could remember and trust at this moment. The children had come to visit the Taurus Gold Saint's grave. Finally, the youngest in the group had calmed down. The little girl sat down and confided that she had decided to give up her dream of becoming a saint. She came here only to be closer to the Taurus Saint. After a period of training, she realized she didn't have the qualities to become a saint. However, she wouldn't run away from this war. Even without becoming a saint, there were still many ways to help everyone. She remembered the words Taurus once said: humans don't necessarily have to become saints or participate in fighting. Just becoming strong and kind people is enough. She had also believed that after the Holy War ended, Taurus would return and continue being the gentle father he was before. But that could never happen anymore. She hoped her friend would continue walking on that path. Someday, she hoped he would inherit the title of Taurus Gold Saint and wear the cloth of their lost father. She wished for him to become worthy of that title. The boy agreed and promised he would definitely become such a person, not disappointing Taurus. The little girl also hoped that when the youngest grew up, they would be able to understand everything. They had to be strong to continue living. Tenma stood watching that scene, his heart aching as if being cut. Suddenly, a gold saint blocked his path. That person warned Tenma not to freely enter or exit this place because the sanctuary was on high alert. That person was the Cancer Gold Saint. Tenma asked this person to let him leave. He didn't want to return to the sanctuary anymore. Tenma believed everything was his fault, that Taurus had to sacrifice himself. It would be better if he no longer stayed here, and the specter with the black flame had told him so. Pandora would keep sending assassins to kill him. There would be others who would have to sacrifice like Taurus. Therefore, Tenma decided to leave this place and participate in the holy war on his own. In war, some would live and some would die. Incidentally mentioning this matter, the Cancer Gold Saint wanted Tenma to know something. If a saint left the sanctuary without permission, that person would have to receive heavy punishment. However, despite saying so, he also admitted that Tenma was different from others. For that reason, Tenma still had value, so Cancer wouldn't punish him at this time. But he also wouldn't let Tenma leave easily. Cancer imprisoned Tenma in the dungeon and would only release him when they needed to use him. Tenma screamed, demanding to be released from this place. He frantically punched the iron bars, then collapsed. In this situation, Tenma thought that Doko and Shin certainly wouldn't forgive him either. And Taurus too. They had entrusted so many things to him. But looking at himself, Tenma felt he had absolutely no capability at all. At this moment, Tenma suddenly remembered the specter with a black flame. He had said that Pandora was directly commanding Hades' army. That meant currently Tenma had no idea what Alone was doing. According to Pandora's surveillance, the Cosmo of her subordinates along with Taurus had disappeared. However, Tenma had still survived. This showed the assassins had failed. Pandora served directly under Hades. If this news reached the twin gods' ears, or worse, reached Lord Hades' ears, everything would be completely ruined. She had arbitrarily commanded the Spectre army. Therefore, Pandora was determined at all costs to kill Tenma, to prove her loyalty to Hades. At that moment, a shadow appeared from behind. He said he would forgive Pandora's failure in assassinating Pegasus. Even if he forgave Pandora, Lord Hades wouldn't easily overlook this matter. Immediately after, Hades' voice came through. Hades questioned Pandora why she had arbitrarily ordered the assassins. No matter which choice Pandora made, she would ultimately receive punishment. Hades completely didn't understand her feelings, and from then on became increasingly distant from her. Afterward, the two death gods appeared again. If Pandora couldn't resolve everything herself, they would personally prepare for Hades. They ordered Pandora to bring Hades there and seal him away. Pandora couldn't do that. She couldn't betray the Lord Hades she respected. The two death gods then planted another thought in her head. If she didn't comply, Hades would return to Pegasus's side. What she did wouldn't be considered betrayal at all, because she had sworn loyalty to Hades. Everything was simply for his sake. The Spectre promised he would help Pandora, making her believe that all of this was for Lord Hades. On the other side, Hades continued painting. Pandora knelt down begging. Hades already knew about Pandora letting assassins hide in his shadow and carry out assassinations, even arbitrarily commanding the specters. He was extremely angry and believed this behavior was unforgivable. Hades ordered Pandora to stay away from him and didn't want to see her face again, making her reflect on herself. Pandora painfully knelt on the ground. She didn't understand why his heart was always wavering. Hades said he himself wasn't attached to any memories, only focused on completing the painting and his plan. Hearing this, Pandora became even more convinced that Hades was worthy of being the supreme god. Suddenly, she saw the painting at the center, an image of 3 children playing together. Pandora realized that part of the painting was influenced by memories. Finally, she understood that Hades was still disturbed by humanity and memories, by the incomplete soul of a mortal. Pandora went mad. She believed Hades needed to focus his spirit to complete the painting and liberate this world. She hoped Hades' soul would become pure. Pandora begged Hades to forgive her, then brought him into another space. She believed everything she did was for Lord Hades. Tenma at this moment was extremely angry because he couldn't do anything. If he wanted to know how Alone was now, he absolutely had to find him. Tenma couldn't be imprisoned in this place forever. Finally, he used his Cosmo to shatter the iron bars and escape. Yato emerged from below, asking Tenma to restrain himself. He just wanted to leave quickly. Yato sighed, admitting that every time he went with Tenma, he always ran into trouble. Outside, someone was already waiting. Looking carefully, that person was Yusuriha. She had passed the tests and officially became a saint. However, her cloth was still left at the sanctuary. The elder had given her a special opportunity, so she brought it along. Not only that, Eusuria had even been promoted to a rank higher than Yato's Bronze Saint. Though not fully understanding everything, Tenma was certain that the Elder was the one behind all these arrangements. Tenma decided to leave here and advance toward Hades' territory. At the sanctuary, the Elder of Jameer appeared. It had been a very long time since the three had met again. He believed everything that happened was according to Tenma's will. Only when facing death could the human soul become stronger. If Pegasus was only allowed to live safely, it would truly be a waste. Humans needed to be used properly. If Pegasus no longer existed, then no one could harm Hades, not only as Lord Hades, but also as the soul of Alone. That was Athena's hope and wish. Finally, the Elder's people had helped Tenma escape successfully. This time, the Jameer Elder also had to take a risky gamble. He knew it wouldn't be easy to change the Pope's decision, but he believed the Pope would bear the responsibility for Pegasus. He also hoped Athena, Sasha, would express all her feelings. Athena handed over her scepter and ran off. It seemed their enemy was not only Hades and Pandora, but also those hiding behind the darkness. Pandora was still playing the harp. Pegasus's Cosmo was becoming increasingly clear. It turned out the connection between the three had existed since ancient times. Pegasus would always confront Lord Hades, and this tragedy was repeating once again. Even so, they were certain that Hades had been imprisoned in a place no one could access. They had erected a protective barrier around Hades' castle, and would make Pegasus fall before reaching there. Death, fear, and despair would be under their control. Tenma had escaped from the sanctuary. Looking back behind, Athena, his dear friend Sasha, was looking toward him, smiling in hope of a victorious day. Gaining more motivation, Tenma was determined that this time he would successfully return.